welcome to Tough Talk with me, Emerald. So, guys, it is our 10th episode, and that's a really big deal to me, so I'm going to celebrate with a drink, and I laugh because I'm always drinking on these things, but let's celebrate to the Tough Talk 10th episode. Cheers! So, remember that sangria I had last week? I'm still drinking a little bit of it, but this one is full of brandy, actually. It's really good, and the fruit is just right. Tonight I'm going to start off with something a little bit funny, a little bit lighthearted in my PTLO. So let's talk a little bit about the VMAs. Actually, I don't really want to talk about the VMAs. I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about how Rihanna slayed it, and congratulations to her for winning the Michael Jackson Video Vanguard Award. She has had some really fantastic songs and videos and dance tunes, so congratulations to her. But really, the story is the queen herself, Beyonce, who basically sang her entire album of Lemonade. And I told my husband, this is how I imagine the conversation with MTV went. MTV calls up Beyonce. Hey Beyonce, we'd like for you to sing a song on the VMAs. Beyonce, okay, I'll sing Lemonade. MTV, oh, but Beyonce, we only have like 4 minutes. Beyonce, I said what I said. Like, she straight up sang the entire album with the spoken word pieces and, like, put on the whole, you know, visual album as well. It gave me life. I hope it gave you all life, too. Shout out to Beyonce for continuously snatching people bald across the world. So, cheers, Beyonce. You heard about Chris Brown this week? So, apparently, some woman was at his house, and she called 911 saying that he had assaulted her with a gun, something like that. And the police came, knocked on his door. He had a standoff. He was like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not letting y'all in. His right, didn't have a warrant. So they went, got a warrant, and they finally came in and arrested him. Allegedly, this woman sent a text message to one of her friends saying, you know, I'm going to call the police on this dude. I'm going to get him arrested. Chris Brown maintained his innocence during, you know, this whole ordeal. The police search his house, don't find any firearms. And so, like, Chris Brown's telling the truth. And it's hard, right? Because Chris Brown is one of those dudes who's always involved in a whole bunch of fuckery, so you don't know when to believe him. Like, he really is the guy, like the boy who cried wolf. And this time he was telling the truth. But, like, we didn't believe him. We were like, oh, look at Chris Brown doing dumb shit again. But no, he was just living his black ass life, and we didn't believe him. So, and the woman was not joining the scammer, although, Lord, I wish it had been, because that would have been the best story in the world. But some woman just scammed Chris Brown and got his ass arrested. Sorry, we didn't believe you, Sea Breezy. I don't know if my apology means anything to you if you ever see this, but I believe you now. You was just living your life, so sorry about that. Have y'all heard about the DNC leak that happened also? I'll go over this real quickly. So apparently from the desk of Nancy Pelosi, there was a memo sent regarding how, you know, people running for Congress, how anybody having any type of event regarding Democratic National Party should interact with people from the Black Lives Matter movement, with any activists. And this came from Nancy Pelosi's desk. And basically, so she labeled the Black Lives Matter movement as a movement that's looking to end anti-black racism. So she labeled a very specific thing, ending anti-black racism, right? And then these were the tactics that were put out to everybody. It said, meet with local activists, sure. Invite local Black Lives Matter activists to, you know, events, but make sure that their invites are limited. So you don't want too many of them there. Make sure limited. Listen to their concerns. And then here's the thing that really pissed me off. Then she said, but don't offer support for concrete policy positions. I think that's really interesting because early on in the memo, she said that this is a group that's very specifically about anti-black racism. So we know what the policy and positions is going to be in reference to, anti-black racism. Yet she doesn't want somebody to offer concrete support on things regarding anti-black racism. Just something to think about. I'm going to sip a little bit of tea on that one. Keep doing that, y'all. It's like my first time drinking tonight. So this next little piece is going to take us into our top story. But so everybody knows what's going on with Colin Kaepernick, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about that later on. But I want to talk about Cam Newton and Ben Roethlisberger and their reactions to what's going on. So Cam Newton, who is the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers, my hometown team, African-American male, was asked about, his thought on Kaepernick's protest, and he basically was like, I'm not necessarily with it. I don't understand why, like, this 1/8 of an inch, speaking of our skin, the top layer of skin, is so important to people. Why do we keep bringing it up? We're all the same outside of this, like, one little part. Blah, 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 blah. And, I just want to look at him and be like, Cam Newton, sit your coon ass down. Because while you out here throwing footballs and shucking and jiving in the end zone, these white NFL fans is calling you a nigger because of that 1/8 of an inch on your skin. And you can't recognize that somebody is out here trying to bring light to what's going on in this world and, like, acknowledge it. If you don't have, Jesse Williams said it, I'm not going to quote him directly, but basically he said, if you don't have shit to add to the movement, then sit down and get out the goddamn way, okay? It's fine. You don't want to add to it, fine, but don't say shit either that's going to work against the progress that we're trying to make. When just last year you were talking about how proud you were to be an African-American, a black quarterback in the league. So, like, let's not act like you don't know what the fucking deal is, Cam Newton. So, we're going to keep it 100. And then I'm going to go ahead on to one of your peers over the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger. He also is talking about how he is not adding any support to Mr. Kaepernick and how, he doesn't necessarily think it's right. And I had to really, like, take some time and sit down and be like, is this the same Ben Roethlisberger that raped somebody? Like, you really going to try to come at me with some ethical, moral, what's right and wrong rhetoric? You have as much moral compass and ethical say as a fucking slave trader. So you really need to take a step back, thank your lucky stars in the NFL don't give a shit about what its employees do, then that you still got a damn job after being a rapist, because you really don't need to talk to nobody about what's right and what's wrong and what's disrespectful. And you know what? Speaking of rapists, fuck you, Brock Turner. How about that? I'm going to drink to that. Fuck you, Brock Turner. So that's going to bring us into our top story, which is Mr. Colin Kaepernick. So I'm going to give you, like, the basics of it. Y'all know how this goes. I try not to editorialize too much during the top story. That usually comes during the social justice or bust part. But, whatever, it happens. So, Colin Kaepernick, he has, for the last couple of games, has been sitting / taking a knee during the national anthem. And basically he said, I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the streets and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder. It's very clear about what he is doing. He has decided that there are issues going on that he wants to protest and I say make a stand even though he was sitting, haha. But, take a stand on. And so that's what he's doing. It's also recently come out that he's going to be donating $1 million to different organizations that are fighting, for social justice against any type of inequality regarding marginalized people. So he's physically protesting, he's making people uncomfortable, he's starting conversations. He is also quite literally putting his money where his mouth is. He's trying to get this ball rolling because it's going to take everybody to get involved with these conversations. So that's kind of the blanket of it, right? There are two things regarding the story that I want to talk about, and that's the backlash of it. So one, people are saying that what he's doing is disrespectful to our veterans because, they fought in wars, people have died, and you can stand up and respect the flag and the anthem. And then two, people are saying that in general it's just disrespectful to the country. Like, you're raised in this country, that's really great, and you're making all this American money, and here you are dissing America. So let me just stop right there and say a couple things. One, I say this all the time. You can hold two seemingly diametrically opposed ideas in your head at one time, and they can both be true, right? Like, it can be true that I really truly love my country. It can also be true that I think some things in my country need to be changed, right? I say all the time, I love my husband more than anybody in this world, and there's some things that I think he needs to work on, and that's okay. Doesn't mean that I love him any less. Doesn't mean that I don't want to be married to him. It just means that I love him and I want better for him. So that's the same thing going on right now. And I have said this quote before, and I'll say it again. James Baldwin, who I love and will probably quote again later today, said, I love America more than any country in the world, and for this reason I reserve the right to perpetually criticize her. You know why? Because I'm so invested in how great America can be that I want to make sure that we pick out all the things that aren't great so that she can be at her greatest potential. That is what I believe Colin Kaepernick is doing. I believe he is saying, I am here, I do have these opportunities, and I think that this is wonderful, and I love it here. We have all of these things available to all of our citizens, and yet there are still a couple of pieces here that we need to work on, and so I want to bring light to those couple of things so that we can work on them, so that we can be better, so that we can continue to be the greatest nation in the world, you know? That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is in regards to how people are saying that he's being disrespectful to veterans. I would argue that Colin Kaepernick is actually showing more respect for veterans than anybody who does not exercise certain freedoms, okay? We have the freedom to protest, and I'll get into our First Amendment right in a bit, and the freedom of speech, and lots of other freedoms that you all are aware of via the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so I would say that if a veteran went to war, fought for these freedoms, died for these freedoms, and somebody did not exercise them, that's actually being disrespectful to that veteran. The fact of the matter is, Colin Kaepernick is exercising his paid for by blood freedoms. He is respecting and honoring our veterans by exercising the freedoms that many have died for and many are still fighting for. So, miss me with that bullshit, okay? And now I'm just going to go ahead and transition into the social justice, because y'all know how I do. It's always related. So what I really want to talk about here is our First Amendment right. And I'm going to just lay out the First Amendment exactly as it is written in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, okay? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, freedom of religion, they're not going to do anything, they're not going to make a law for any religion or against any religion. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and particularly the right of the people peaceably to assemble. That is your protest. Okay? That is our God-given right. I say God-given, but that's the right that we have here in this country. To peaceably assemble. And what's more peaceful than fucking sitting down? He literally sat down. Okay? So, what you're telling me then is, you don't like when we riot. Things happen. A couple weeks ago, stuff happened in Milwaukee. People rioted in the street. And, when any other fuckery happens around the country, people neighborhoods get upset and frustrated, rightfully so. People riot in the street. Buildings get burned down. And so you all, and I'm saying you all loosely, really I mean a lot of white people, and no, not all of anybody does anything, but yes, it's mostly white people. So if I'm not talking to you, then don't take it personally, but if I am talking to you, I'm talking to you. So white people get mad when we riot, and they say, oh, be peaceful. Then you have a man who literally, not only does he peacefully protest, he simply doesn't do anything. He doesn't say anything. He just sits down. He could have been praying. He could have been meditating. He could have been going over the plays in his head for the upcoming game. He could have been doing anything, but he literally just sat there quietly. And yet and still, he's still wrong. He is still wrong. Like, how much privilege and arrogance do you have to continuously tell us how we are to demonstrate our freedoms? Like, who do you think you are to tell me how I am to demonstrate the freedoms that are given to me? And what I have realized is that while I revere a lot of our founding fathers, anybody who knows me knows how much I love Thomas Jefferson, but like, these freedoms weren't meant for people like me or people like Colin Kaepernick. So I think what really pisses you off is that, like, we have them now, and so seeing us really start to exercise them is getting under your skin. But you know what? I don't give a fuck how much arrogance you think you have or how privileged you are. You will not dictate how I live my life and how I exercise my freedoms, and particularly when it comes to my freedom of speech, my freedom to assemble, and my freedom of religion. Those are mine, and you will not dictate that. And you obviously will not dictate that for Mr. Kaepernick, because he's doing whatever the hell he wants to do. And it's peaceful. And you still mad. Y'all are still mad. Y'all are still mad. So if he was out there throwing rocks, burning down CVS's, you'd be mad. But he taking the high road, holding press conferences, donating millions of dollars, talking to kids, signing autographs, winning football games, and then every now and again when he gets pissed off at some of the wrong that's going on in this country, he says, you know what, I'm just going to take a seat for a second. And y'all still mad. You fucking kidding me? Like, get out of here with that bullshit. And then, you know what else is really funny to me? Is that this is like, you think about these two different men, right? You think about Colin Kaepernick, who says, you know what, America could be great, but right now, like, we're seeing some things that I don't really like right now, and I want those to change. And people are dragging him through the mud. People are pissed off at him about it. Then you have this other fool who is a front runner for president, who also says America is not great, because whether he says that directly or not, the fact that he is running a platform of Make America Great Again, it lets us know that it's currently not great. His ass about to be president. What type of hypocritical bullshit is that? Like, it's white privilege at its finest. And it just shows the hypocrisy of a lot of people in this country. It shows that when marginalized people finally decide to stand up, that you get pissed off about it. And it's funny, the other day, Harry Belafonte did an interview, and he said, to mute the slave has always been to the best interest of the slave master. So essentially, you don't want to say anything because it's in your best interest. You were okay with the oppression happening. You've been okay with the inequity and the inequality. And so you don't want anybody to say anything. And when people are not saying anything, you want them to say something. When people are not doing anything, like Colin Kaepernick, because he's not saying anything, he's not doing anything, he's just sitting there. You're still mad at him. But that's because you are okay with the oppression. You are okay with the terrible inequity that's happening in this country. You're okay with those things. Take a long, hard look in the mirror. It's a lot of bullshit going on. And if you're a part of the problem, I hope that you talk to your maker about it, because shit's about to change, y'all. I'm just saying. I'm going to wrap up because I have a couple of final thoughts that I want to get to that are really important to me. So, final thoughts. I have 3. First of all, there is an uprising happening in the Dakotas, and I do want to make sure that I mention this because it's not getting a lot of press, it's not getting a lot of media attention. People are not talking a lot about it, but there is an Indigenous uprising happening in the Dakotas right now. I'm going to give you some quick facts about it. It's because of we're trying to build the Dakota Access Pipeline, and it's an oil pipeline to be built on treaty land, a half a mile from Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. It will threaten the drinking water of that land, and it also disturbs a lot of sacred and cultural sites of that particular area of the Sioux tribe there. Right now, they've been in a standoff for about 22 days, and the North Dakota Director of Homeland Security, Greg Wiles, has since then cut off trailers and water to those who are out there protesting. Thousands of protesters there. They've stopped the water going out there. It's been upwards of 90 degrees out there. like, it's just a mess, right? And this is treaty land, so it's already it's stolen land. You know what? That's for another time. But this is land that has been treated to them from the United States government, and so now we're trying to say that, you know, us being able to get like this 1,500 miles, or excuse me, 1,500 whatever barrels a day of oil through is more important than this treaty that we've promised. Us disrupting your cultural sites is more important, you know. And it's just a mess. And I want to bring attention to it because, you know, a threat, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this is an injustice, and this is another group of marginalized peoples who are just overlooked and who are just experiencing inequality and inequity at the hands of the United States government left and right. And so I stand in solidarity with you all. If you don't know much about what's going on, I encourage you to look it up. I also want to talk very briefly, I just want to say his name because that's important to me. There was a 19-year-old black teen killed in Oregon. He was killed about a month ago by a white supremacist, and I won't say the murderer's name because I'm just not going to, but I do want to say the teen's name. His name, excuse me, his name was Larnell. It was Larnell, right, babe? Yeah, Larnell Bruce. And I just want to make sure that we know that. Larnell Bruce. I just want his name out there. It's important that his name be out there. And you can look up that story if you want to. And then lastly, just to kind of end on, I wouldn't call it a high note necessarily, but maybe something that'll make you chuckle. There's apparently been people dressed up as clowns in the woods of some apartment buildings in Greenville, South Carolina, which is really strange, trying to lure kids in with like stacks of money. So to my citizens of Greenville, South Carolina, I would just say, hide your kids, hide your wives. There's clowns in the woods. Y'all be safe out there. That's a mess. Like, I hope it's a Halloween stuff because that is a true mess. Otherwise, that's all I got. We'll see what happens in this upcoming week. There is a lot that's been going on. Y'all just stay up to date, know what's going on in the world. Y'all know y'all can always ask me if there are questions about anything. But until then, keep sipping.